This week we celebrate Yom Yerushalayim. It is 54 years since the heroic Israeli armed forces succeeded with God's help in liberating Jerusalem from the Jordanian occupation and reuniting the Jewish capital under Israeli rule. But what kind of city did they find? I remember walking along the Cardo in Jerusalem some 30 years ago. There was a transparent perspex cover set over a deep pit, and you could see down about 20 feet. Astonishingly, the walls of the pit showed different pavements of Jerusalem. The city has been invaded and leveled so many times that its pavements are now a good 20 feet higher than they were in the time of the Second Temple. The Romans, Crusaders, Saracens, Mamelukes, Ottomans, French and British have all left their mark. So what remains of Jerusalem of old, the city where Abraham was ready to sacrifice his son Isaac because his faith in God was so great, where Jacob had a vision of a ladder stretching up to the heavens with angels going up and down on it, where King Solomon's temple stood? The Arve HaNachal, written by Rav David Eiberschutz, quotes a Tosfos saying that in fact the holiness of Jerusalem is eternal and cannot be erased, irrespective of invasion, exile, misconduct and strife. Psalm 122, one of the Shir HaMa'aleh Psalms, is the source for this profound truth. There, King David refers to Jerusalem as Yerushalayim HaBenuya, built Jerusalem. Jerusalem is always built. The sanctity of Jerusalem, which was so apparent when Solomon's temple stood on Temple Mount, is a permanent quality of the city, even when Jerusalem is in ruins, even when the temple at its heart is absent. Why is Jerusalem's holiness so enduring? The Arve Nachal says that King David explained it all in his beautiful psalm. Yerushalayim HaBenuya, Ke'ir Shechubra Lo Yachdov, Shesham Alu Shvatim Shivtei Hashem Eidotis LeYisrael Lodos L'Shem Hashem. Built Jerusalem, a city joined together, where the tribes of God, would go up to give thanks to God. This was the city where people used to unite in religious worship. The offerings in the temple were funded by the entire Jewish people, and all the tribes used to make pilgrimage to Jerusalem 3 times a year. What's more, says King David, this was the seat of justice for the whole nation. Shama Yoshvu Chis Ois LeMishpat. There were the thrones of justice. The great Sanhedrin, the supreme court of the Jewish state, stood next to the temple on Temple Mount, because there cannot be a meaningful national unity which reflects God's oneness, nor a true holiness which creates fellowship between God and his people, if oppression and cheating lurk behind the scenes. Fairness and equality go hand in hand with the unity and godliness of our people. So great are these twin virtues of fellowship and justice that they can never be erased. Even in its darkest hours, Jerusalem still retains the invisible glory of its spiritual zenith. This week, in the saddest of circumstances, I glimpsed from afar the magnificence of this built Jerusalem, of Yerushalayim HaBenuya, as my sister and her family have been the beneficiaries of the fellowship and holiness of the Jewish people in Jerusalem. It is just over a week since my dear nephew Moshe lost his life in the terrible disaster at Miron. Rachel and I were unable to travel to Israel, but we managed to watch Moshe's funeral online. It took place at 2 o'clock in the morning, Jerusalem time. Despite the lateness of the hour, the boys of the Mir Yeshiva came out in their hundreds to bid their comrade farewell. It didn't stop there. A family friend who visited my sister described to me the scene at the house where she stayed for Shiva. She was surrounded by lots and lots of women. At least 30 of her ex-pupils came to see her in the 90 minutes we were there, as well as many women she didn't know. Young men came in and out, telling their personal recollections of Moshe's kindness, diligence, intelligence, punctuality, warmth, and what an outstanding friend and companion he was. There was a call on the radio for English speakers to visit the Shiva house, as well as Spanish speakers who could visit the Shiva of the Argentinian family who also lost a son. We went there afterwards, but they had already asked people to stop coming, as there were too many for them to cope. The religious divides that we so often lament melted away as Chilonim and Haredim, complete strangers, conversed and mourned together. The Israeli President Reuven Rivlin dropped in, queuing with the other visitors to say a few words of comfort to our grieving family. And alongside this friendship, the Torah, our people's law and beating heart, binds the people to God in the shadow of death, as it did in the radiance of happy life. The laws of mourning have been respected and have wrought their magic of comfort and reflection. There was so much demand for learning the Mishnah in honor of Moshe during the Shloshim that the sheets allocating the learning were filled up 3 times over. Prime Minister Netanyahu has promised that justice will be served and that lessons will be learned to safeguard other precious lives. Fellowship, equality, Torah, justice. These are for me at the heart of Yom Yerushalayim. We can give thanks not only for the glorious gift of reunification and the miracles of the 6-day war, but also for the spiritual splendor that graces Jerusalem to this day. May we merit soon to see Jerusalem entirely rebuilt with Binyan Beit HaMikdash, the rebuilding of the temple. At that time, we will all celebrate the fulfillment of the words of Isaiah. Bila hamavis lanetzach, God has swallowed up death forever. U'mocha Hashem Elokim dimo me'al kol panim, and the Lord God will wipe away tears from upon all faces.